Anyway, so this presentation is a little bit different. I am not going to open a code editor.
No.
Because you really wouldn't want to see that from me. It'd be kind of scary. But anyhow, and you'll understand in a moment. So basically, the choice to prepare this presentation is usually, is a decision to demonstrate something, as we've already seen. This presentation is more about discussing that process of a decision. I know when I volunteered, I had a completely different plan and decided, well, you know what? I usually have a checklist of things that I need to go through as far as learning something new, challenging myself, or whatever it is. So I'm like, well, this is a fine time to pick up something new, so why not? And talk about the process, right? So this really is about, that spark basically that enables that commitment to learn something new. The presentation is really for those of you who are maybe a little bit newer to this whole, coding thing. I am in a lot of respects, and I'm not in a lot of other respects. So just to kind of give you an idea, I've actually been creating websites for a little while, but the tech has changed quite a bit since I've started. So I'll explain it a little bit further as I get through these slides. So as you see, we're starting off with a very clear palette here, or not clear palette, but blue palette here. And we'll be adding to that, obviously, through this presentation. So anyway, this is really for those who have braved through many hours of those confusing tutorials, or those badly written books, pointless workshops, rushed conference talks, and dry lectures, and trying to build their skills up, right? So some of you have probably been coding for a little while, maybe 15 plus years, I'm sure.
She called you old.
Is that right?
It's okay, I'm still in that bunch,
No,
so it's all right.
is that right?
Yes, it is and it isn't. So, yes, don't
Oh.
worry about it. Wow!
It changed.
It is and it isn't. I'm still talking. I'm going to roll in with it.
I like your style.
Come on, all right. All right, so anyway, so I'm sure it still feels like, even for those of you who've been doing it just for 4 years, I'm sure it feels like a lifetime in tech anyway. So, but maybe a few of you have just committed to diving into this world, and that's really what this is all about, because I really feel your pain, and I want to talk about that a bit. So, anyway, for those of you who are coming from a different discipline or no discipline at all, obviously there's a boot camp for that. And yeah, it's perfect for anyone with no life or running from the one they already have. So, how many of you have actually taken a boot camp?
2 boot camps.
Yeah,
3.
2, 3, right? Right? Yeah. Just anyway, they're a nightmare. So a little bit about me. Yes, this is intentional. I should probably have put that on there, blank on purpose or whatever it is. So anyway, just to give you a little bit of background about me, my education is anchored in graphic arts, which basically means that at some point I wanted to be a fine artist focused on illustration, but I decided that eating and clothing myself was a pursuit worthy of my time. So graphic art seemed like a fair promise of life's necessities. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And I have proof, because I know a lot of fine artists that don't really do what they want to do, and unfortunately they never figured it out. But anyway,
Work in McDonald's.
Yeah, or they have this debt that's never going to be paid. So they're running. But anyway, so what's it like to be a graphic designer? That's pretty much it right there. It's not that much different from, being a coder essentially, and being a developer. You oftentimes are, trying to solve something, right? Well, we're trying to solve something too. So it's really not that far-fetched as far as an experience goes. It's that frustration. So why am I learning code? Well, because I really, really want one of these, and I plan to wear it to my first dev job interview. Unicorn, can't say no to unicorn, right? Anyway, but seriously, yes, this is blank on purpose. I gotta check in with you every once in a while. Anyway, so graphic design was once encompassing, overlapping kind of many disciplines and definitely different practices. But since I finished school, it's actually splintered into various titles and expertise. So completing my degree, I was basically on the cusp of the whole internet boom thing, And so every, job interview ended with the same question. But can you design for the web? So what followed were years of very very frequent self-paced learning ambitions, and one-off web projects, rolled into some greater marketing plan for every new employer. So the other thing I experienced was oftentimes this. I'm glad you guys get it. I'm glad you guys get it.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that so much. So anyway, yeah, so there would be my mock-up, and there would, of course, be the launch of the thing, and, it's this kind of, thing that would happen, and, yeah, not exactly the same. So for me, I really need to understand really what my technical limitations were for designing something. And I wanted to know more than anything else what the possibilities were. And over the last 20 years, obviously those possibilities have, changed quite a bit as far as what is possible. Anyway, so fast forward to 3 years ago. So we got, kind of the base of where I started and how I've got here today. So just stick with me here. Okay, so anyway, so a lot of self-paced study and is ongoing, obviously, and very lonesome. So the nearest local community of web developers is 50 miles away. I think we all know where the hell that is. That was obviously before you guys set this whole thing up, so, I didn't know you existed yet, so obviously,
We're here for you.
Timing is everything, right? So I was convinced at that point that I could not, be the only web hopeful, basically, web developer helpful in the suburbs. So I decided to email my local library to ask if anyone else in the community has expressed basically this interest in code, and kind of coming up with a study group or something, anything. So one brief face-to-face meeting later, I'm teaching WordPress, HTML, CSS, and hosting a free code camp study group. Nothing will force you to learn something fast, like teaching or volunteering for a lightning talk. So that's why I'm here. Anyway, fast forward to now, the present. So I'm still teaching at the library, but now I've actually become an adjunct instructor for Harper College, mostly teaching courses on Adobe applications. And so far, they've only allowed me to teach one web course. It's okay, no hard feelings. We'll get there. I'll convince them it's okay. As with any institution, you get those old teachers in there that just got that bone in their mouth and they're just hanging on to those classes and they won't give them up. So it's kind of hard to come by the opportunity to actually teach things that you're more passionate about. But I don't mind teaching the Adobe applications. I mean, for the most part, it's obviously where my core existence, and it's kind of fun to actually really educate people on the real world, My background is like, oh, just make it wonderful and anything is possible and there's no budget and and they'll love your colors and there's no limitations, and that's a fantasy. You get to this real world and really people don't care about what it looks like. They just want to know if you got it done now. So every time I teach, I always I encourage people try to be as productive as possible, learn shortcut keys and whatever it is, just make it fast. Don't worry about being unique. It's just not existent anymore at this point, but that's just me. So anyway, through this whole process, I've been updating my HTML and CSS skills. I'm now using a grown-up text editor, which is nice. So, and I know I'm no longer fearful of the terminal, which is nice. I npm this, I npm that, and I now get, which is great. So, and I've even survived, like I said, a couple of boot camps here and there. And I use JavaScript, ES5 like finger paints. It's great. So I'm really ready to move beyond this point of this lower end JavaScript stuff and start using some more frameworks, obviously. So that's where we're kind of going at this point. So we're here. Pick one JavaScript framework. Now, why is it taking me so long to pick a framework at this point? Glad I asked. So the advice you get from any established developer is all the same. Learn whatever gets you the job, right? And that's not bad advice at all. It really isn't. But there are obviously some options, and I wanted to go over some of them and my impressions, basically, of them. Angular? Yeah, this is kind of the impression that I get from anybody who talks about Angular. It's always the whole painful process, and they're always kind of cringing and trying to fit themselves into this box that you know, they're not cats, they don't fit into these boxes, but you know, they force themselves into it anyway. So yeah, not super attractive at this point. Then there's React, nothing wrong with that. And you know, you get the whole React like, you know, I know my shit, you know. I'm pretty clever, you know.
Smug bastard.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Yes, you
The
nailed it.
right
That's the
icon
smug.
for these people.
Smug. And there's nothing wrong with that, but man, there's just so much stuff around React. Like, anyway, so now we get to this point. And this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm seeing when it comes to Vue developers. Now, I'm not trying to convert anybody. Okay, this is just me kind of explaining my road to getting to here, which for me is kind of the gateway, right? And I'll explain a little bit more about that and why I've chosen basically to start with Vue first. And I'm not abandoning React. I'm not saying I'm never going to learn it. I'm going to have to because it's actually rolled into a lot of what Vue is. So, along with other things too. Anyway, so this is the Vue that I'm hoping for. I don't know if I'm going to get it, but we'll see.
You have like 10 minutes.
Do I? I'm doing pretty good. All right.
Well, you said you'd be done in 10 minutes.
No, I
You're
didn't.
fine. Don't listen to him. Do you need a tissue?
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so you know, I've been doing a little bit of research here and there, very light. You know, obviously I have a lot of distractions in all the things that I do. But recently I was listening to a podcast and Views on Vue, which I don't know even how I came about this. I don't know, but I decided to give it a try and you know, see what it was all about. And one of the things that really stuck to me was this human-focused design. This person, this Gwendolyn person, was describing it as, you know, this code is basically written for human beings, and not so much for computers or just computers. So it's just this human focus, just knowing that, you know, human beings have to interact with this and figure this out. So let's, you know, make a little common sense out of it, I guess. So this I can relate to in a lot of ways. That's what I do. But anyhow, here's a couple of other things that were mentioned too. So naming conventions are kind of like jQuery, which I'm not suggesting anyone bother with jQuery. No. Anyway, but we're everything exactly what you think it should be called, which is great. So this intuitive to use and navigate around the library because of that. I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway, the layout is very lightweight. So the documentation is very accessible for people who need to come on board. The whole point is that the documentation itself is, well, documentation is very, I guess, approachable compared to some other, you know, language codes. And the other point that she also made was that they give you really more than just the boilerplate kind of stuff. They give you actually something to build, something to walk away with. So it's meaty, and so I'm like, okay, that sounds really great. And then she also said that it's basically Vue as a collection of the best parts of React, Angular, and some other stuff. So I'm like, well, this is great. But so we'll get back to that in a second. But in the end, it's JavaScript, Jim, but not as we know it. So anyway, at the end of the podcast, this is what I kind of felt like, you know, like just like, okay, this could be a cool thing. Let's see where this goes. So I did a little further, you know, exploration here, and Sarah Dresser is one of those individuals that I follow. She is very creative and also codes, so you know it would be nice to live a similar existence. But anyhow, this is her list of reasons why Vue is pretty awesome, I guess. Clean, semantic, declarative, which I get because I love CSS. Declarative, I get that. Easy to maintain, and reactive. Now, the reactive part I want to come back to in a little bit. But anyway, so I decided, okay, it's time for me to go ahead and jump into the abyss and see, you know, what's there, right? So at this point now, I've got to pick some resources to learn from, which is very daunting because, as all of you know, you can go ahead and Google something and you'll find a plethora of, like, you know, options for learning. And one place I don't recommend is YouTube, because those videos are just not, they make a lot of assumptions. A lot of times, you know, people will get on there and start, you know, educating you on something, and they'll make assumptions about your environment and what you already know and things like that. You really are not getting a good, you know, understanding of what's happening. So it's kind of a lost cause. But anyway, I decided to go ahead and take Sarah's class, Introduction to Vue.js, which is available. I'm not, getting any money for this, by the way. So, but on front-end webmasters, and also supplement a little bit with the Google, research or searches on, some highly rated books, that are available. And Vue.js in Action is one of them for Manning publishers. Yeah. So here's a little bit what I've learned so far. Now, keep in mind that I've only had, I've only been in this abyss basically for about 2.5 weeks at this point. It's more of this accumulative, kind of thing, like, seeing little bits and pieces in here, there, and you're just getting this kind of impression overall on podcasts and whatnot. Like, yeah, Vue is pretty cool. Yeah, check it out. But I have learned this difference between the MVC versus the MVVM. Basically, at its core, of any website, a functionality is simply a way of which the front end or the view can essentially reach the appropriate model or retrieve data, essentially. So we have this whole controller which manipulates the data and in a given model and connects through the GET POST request and JSON string and all that stuff. All the stuff you guys already know, but well, most of you anyway. But the view model thing is a little bit different because it has this, this binder, essentially binding the data between the view and the model. So unlike the MVC thing, which depends on the separation of concerns, this view model, this MVVM, allows the front end and the back end to communicate directly with each other, which is a little bit different. So I'm like, wow, this just seems like a no-brainer to me. I don't know, why not? And then the whole reactive thing. Yeah, it's okay. And then the reactive thing. So what I found kind of interesting is that React is not reactive. So I'm not really sure why they named it that way, but hey, whatever. So I guess my point is here, maybe one of you can explain it to me. But anyhow, reactive web applications, based on the MVVM design principle, uses asynchronous techniques in functional programming, essentially. So we've got this, nice long, short list, essentially, of what defines, a reactive language, essentially. So anyway, so we have observes changes in the application state, propagates change notification throughout the application, renders views automatically in response to change in state, provide timely feedback for user interaction. I think my overall issue with trying to learn JavaScript, I don't think that I've had a very good introduction overall and going to those boot camps and things like that, especially when they start off, what feels like, 10 years behind. It doesn't really help. So I've been very reluctant to kind of like move forward and very, I guess, particular about where I go, because I know I'm going to be in that realm for a while, and I don't want to be wasting my time. I don't want to, obviously I don't want to give in or anything like that. I'm like, I think I can connect with this thing. So another thing I discovered is we have these directives, which is actually a little touch on Angular. So this is like a part that we're starting to see at this point of Angular, being included or something like that. These directives essentially within Vue. I was like, okay, I get, the first list here is pretty self-explanatory. The other one's a little bit more interesting, a little, there's use cases obviously for all these things, but there's even more out there. So the next thing is components, right? Everybody gets components, including Vue. Components and props, actually. So it turns out components are just a collection of elements, which is cool. All right, I'm getting this. And props are for reusing components, but allowing you to change little pieces. All right, I get this. So I think at this point, with all of my years and time, spending, with you guys, obviously, and hearing this stuff, and there's been kind of like this secretive, like, immersion kind of thing that's happening here. So anytime you want to learn a new language, even if it's not code itself, it's always nice to go to the place that you want to, learn the language of. So of course, that's why I'm attending these meetups. So I'm not extremely good at writing JavaScript code yet, but damn, some days when I come to these meetings, like, oh shit, I get that. Like, I think it's sinking in. Holy shit! So, so it's really great. So all these things that I've been doing over the last few years have really kind of complemented, my learning process and progress over time. So, But anyway, so yeah, so we have some components and, and we have some props, which is something else that, like I said, I think is really good as far as, going the Vue route for me, because I'm actually in turn learning about other languages at the same time. I'm going to be learning, 3 or 4 languages that are, been basically mixed into this, framework, which is great. How could you go wrong? This is another thing I found out. So this mustache template thing, which is very new. I'm glad you guys get it. Thank you. Thank you. Sometimes my nerd jokes fall very flat in class.
I like the directive thing with the...
Hey, I respected their time, so you got to get to go.
Anyway, I'm almost done. So the mustache, our logic list template is a logic list template syntax, which uses many different, which is used in many different languages. Anyway, but basically they're template linking tags that either insert variables or run programming logic. So at this point, this is now the 2.5 week mark, 2.5 week mark at this point, and now things are starting to get fun because to me, I'm like, all right, I think this is doable. So it's just not so intimidating anymore. So this is kind of how I feel right now. So anyway, so my journey has just begun with Vue, but I'm pretty excited about learning the language that encompasses so much of the better parts of all the other languages that we've been talking about here. So at some point I'll be swinging back into React and getting more familiar with that, but I think this is a good starting point for me. So, and less pressure, less intimidation. Anyway, so my final word is this, is that give you a chance, essentially. That's what I'm doing, and I hope that some of you will be encouraged to check it out yourself if you haven't already. Don't wait for, don't wait for your boss to ask you about it, is my best suggestion here. Just, get on that as soon as possible, because, you never know which way the winds will blow. So, yeah. So that's pretty much my talk, and I've made time. Thank you very much.
So I have a question. So it is your opinion as compared to us old people, JavaScript novice, that Vue is easier to comprehend and learn than React is easier to comprehend and learn than Angular?
It's not the comprehension, it's the approach. So it's really the approach more than anything else.
I think you would have very much liked AngularJS, because it was originally designed for designers.
Yeah.
Like in mind. And Vue borrows heavily.
Vue is much more like original, the Angular I love, not the Angular it became.
Well, see, this is the thing that I don't understand. So this is all very educational to me, because every time someone talks about Angular 1, it's like,
but they're real developers.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
You just needed a book. What really happens is
like
once the
AngularJS,
community
the
gets
good
big
ones.
enough,
That's a problem.
Well,
everything goes.
You try to tackle more and more complicated problems, and you find out this really simple thing is great, and that's why maybe there's not one answer. To your point, which I like a lot, maybe there's not one answer. There's multiples, right? So it's
I mean, you hit it. Like, there's multiple ways of approaching any particular problem, right? And so I think for me, this is just more digestible for where I'm at right now. And,
I'm just saying, I think you would have liked the original Angular.
Yeah, right.
So then what does it say about Angular 2 then?
But Angular 2 was, so
It's
I
completely
mean, a little bit of
different from what I
history. It's
hear.
like Angular 1 kind of took the whole world over.
Yeah.
And what happened after a couple of years of that is you had a whole bunch of people who knew how to code, and you had a whole bunch of people who knew Angular, and Angular only. They didn't actually know JavaScript. They only knew Angular. And so when Angular 2 came around, a few options popped up. React was wildly hated in the beginning because of JSX, and everyone wanted the separation of templates.
Yeah.
Vue was certainly out there. Mithril was out there. Riot was out there. Both of those have kind of faded into the background. And originally Angular 2 was going to be on their own typed language called AtScript. But they finally, when they adopted TypeScript, people kind of got more on board. But during that interim, a lot of people shifted to Vue, and a lot of people shifted to React, because there was nothing really to hang on to it.
Yeah.
There was no upgrade path. It was like, you are now going to work in a whole new framework or library, and so everything you've been frustrated with you are now free to go look at other things, because this thing that we've all been making money on is dying.
Yeah.
They're openly killing it.
Yeah.
So now you can pick, based on your experience over the last couple of years, that Angular has completely blown up. Now you can pick, do you want to go on with Angular, do you trust them, or do you want to do one of these other things? And so you got Angular 2, now we're on Angular 9 or whatever the hell it is. You got React, and Vue was the other big one. And now you got Svelte.
Well, my take on this is slightly different. I was actually looking at the UI and kind of figure, okay, what is my fastest way to arrive at a complex solution without actually learning unnecessary stuff?
Yeah.
So I went through all three of them and kind of figure, okay, well, the Vue and everything else kind of emanates from incremental changes. The Angular 2, not 1, is pretty much, well, 2 is pretty much everything that's 2 and above, because they're mostly backwards compatible anyway, and they really don't change that greatly. So I kind of figured, okay, given the complexity of the project, which is more like a form-based solution, I kind of figure I want the whole package, so I don't have to choose any of the technologies. I want everything packaged, supported, integrated, and also guiding me through the process to arrive at the complex solution quick. Vue will not do that. You actually have to educate yourself on putting the components together. Angular does it for you. Yeah. And Vue approaches from, okay, if you want to just get a snippet, you can do that. But Angular says, no, forget about snippet. The whole thing is it. You are not going to create an Angular project where half a page is going to basically be in Angular and other half is going to be in whatever else. That is not really how it's supposed to be. It's the Angular becomes your front end. Now there are people that actually use
about, like, framework versus library.
It's more like a framework more than a, yeah. So for me, I'm looking at the solution to my problem. Okay.
Web components is the solution to your problem.
Well, so here's the next one. There are people that actually use Angular for all the layers. Okay, so they do the front end, the back end, and basically the whole 9 yards. No, that's not what I'm coming from. I'm actually coming from a C#. I don't want to say count.
You got 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
So basically, that's a lot.
Go on, ask a question.
So basically, I'm coming from there. So for me, Angular is just the UI. It's basically a means to present the information, okay, that is coming from the server. I do not want the Angular to deal with the database or actually implement the database. Angular can actually do that. So if you partition basically the responsibilities, you will see that you can actually adopt it a lot more differently, and you can approach it differently. And Angular has a very steep learning curve. Basically, it's like a wall, but once you swallow it, everything starts just clicking so nicely and quickly.
Well, that's why I'm really kind of hoping that Vue will be like the spoon-fed version rather than.
But you have to learn a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
The learning curve is so nice.
Thank you,
Just
Megan.
to respect everybody's time, we have one last question from Mike, but only because it's Mike.
Yeah, I did just want to ask Megan. So obviously you alluded to trying to learn this, and you talked about some of the resources that you didn't find helpful. I'm just curious for you personally, when you started trying to transition to this, what did you find the most helpful things when you were trying to get into Vue? Was it just their website? Was it? I know it wasn't YouTube, but some other things. But what did you find most personally?
You know, I think that the podcast that I recently found was probably the pivotal point, of making that decision. And hearing somebody else who has a very similar background to me. She doesn't have the graphic background at all, but the learning process of that. And she had started actually with React and then moved to Vue, and wound up loving it. And that's not the first time I've heard that story. So I'm like, there's got to be something behind this, and it's just worth it for me to like look into and see why that is. Why is it that people are moving this way? And
so was it like was the front end master's course like a key for you, or was it more the podcast stuff, or what?
It was really the instructor more than anything else, because I had, she had been on many podcasts in the past, and she has a similar background to me. So she had demonstrated something. I forget exactly who it was, but it was a video that she demonstrated, how to do something, making a button do this, special little sparkly thing, whatever that was. And so it's like, yeah, this looks so simple, because I'm, comparing basically, how something is built in one way versus the other, Vue versus, React, and I'm seeing less code basically, and I'm seeing some common sense descriptions on that. And like, okay, I think I can wrap my mind around what this is. And maybe it has something to do with, my love of CSS. I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with it. I feel like, in working with that, language for so many years, it's like, that one I just get it. I don't know why. But I think one of my biggest issues overall with coding, period, is every time I see a demonstration, it's always like start with some, object. They write that thing, and then they write something underneath it, then they go back above that, and then they rewrite the thing underneath it, and so there's no consistent story of like, there's no 1, 2, 3, and it drives me insane. It's like, well, in order for this to work, now we got to change this, and then we got to change that, and we got to go back up here because now, it can't be global. It's got to be. What the? Like, seriously, seriously. I'm sorry. It's just
No,
a little bit
I am
of
so totally in agreement with you. Okay, all right. So first of all, thank you, Megan.
Thank you.